Thanks, everybody. I'm Omar Lopez, and I'm the head of Observability at SailPoint, and it's actually really great to be here today. Thanks for having me. It's a bit of a mouthful, that title, but here to just really talk about our journey. We worked with Grafana a lot to solve a lot of our scaling issues, and so that's what the talk is about, our journey and how it went. A little about me. I've been with SailPoint for about 4.5 years now, with 20 years of industry experience. I was a Unix admin, moved into DevOps, very common role. Live in Austin, Texas, with my amazing wife and 2 beautiful children. Austin's great food, weather. Maybe OpsCon will make a stop there at one point. Soccer, like I said, if we were in London, I'd be calling it football, but we're in US, and I love watching it, playing it when my knees allow it, and coaching my son's team. We are big fans of the US national team. Maybe one day they'll win us a World Cup. Yeah, yes. The women have 4. We can't get one. Come on, guys. And this is the team, the observability team at SailPoint. I just wanted to give them a shout out. I wouldn't be up here without them, without their hard work and dedication they bring in every day. We really want to give our engineering teams the best experience that they can to do their jobs well, and while keeping the lights on the infrastructure side. So my agenda is, who is SailPoint? If you're not familiar with it, I'll give a quick rundown. Our first challenge, rising metrics. We're a hypergrowth company, and we were getting a flood of metrics, and what did we do? I'll talk about our DACI, which is our decision-making framework that helps us make complex decisions. And then our second challenge was reducing the volume, because it's just too much, right? And then I'll talk about where we are today and where we're going to go in the future. So if you're not familiar with SailPoint, SailPoint is the category leader in identity security and provides a leading identity security platform that manages and secures access to applications and data, enabling the world's most complex and sophisticated enterprises to protect against identity-centric cyber threats while enhancing efficiency and supporting business transformation. I memorized all that, by the way. Since I've been there, we've undergone so much growth. And with that growth comes challenges. So what's driving this growth? We're signing up new customers. We're writing new features, new microservices. We're opening up new regions, having acquisitions, and all of this is just really adding to our telemetry, our observability platform. But before I get to the answer, I wanted to start off with a little analogy. Where are my skip-bow players at? Anyone out there play skip-bow? 1? Really? 2? I know, I didn't play as a kid myself, but I've been playing with my kids lately, and as we were playing, it just kind of reminded me of how we were scaling Prometheus. So just real quick, the rules of skip-bow. The goal is to, let's see, did that work? Okay, cool. You want to get your build pile out. You want to get rid of that first. So the way you do that is to throw it on the stack pile here, this is a stack pile, stock pile. And you want to put it on your build pile. And the way to do that is through sequential order. So that 6, the player on the right will be playing the 6, top of the 5. Then they'll play the 7. Then they'll play the 8, and so on and so forth until you hit 12. And once you hit 12, that's kind of your limit. That's where the cards end, and that pile is gone. It's removed, and that could happen to your Prometheus server. When you scale up and up and up and up, you hit the limits, and that's what was happening to us. We were hitting the limits of Prometheus. We couldn't scale any higher. And so here's the journey, and I want to go back to where it all started, how Prometheus and Grafana got started at SailPoint. It actually was an intern project. We were on another vendor, prices changed, some other factors happened, and we gave it to an intern and said, hey, stand this up, see how the engineers like it. Well, they loved it. There was so much adoption. By the time I showed up a year later, we were running it in production, and we were off that previous vendor. And that was going well, going great, and we started to hit the growth, the hypergrowth stage, and we were, like I said, going higher and higher in AWS instance types, and we couldn't scale any higher. And so we moved to Cortex. Cortex solved a couple of things for us. The first thing, obviously, we were able to scale horizontally. The second thing, we solved it gave us a single pane of glass. Previously, we had Grafanas in all of our regions. Now we could have one Grafana to pretty much rule them all, which was huge for us at the time. And that worked well for a while until issues happened. Performance issues, we're still scaling, right? Long-range queries started to error out. And what do you do with performance issues? You throw money at it. And so we're throwing money at the problem and increase those ingesters. And at the same time, we started to spend a lot of engineering time on maintaining it and supporting Cortex. We couldn't get to those higher priority initiatives. And it was about this time that Mimir came out. Grafana released Mimir. And so we really were at a crossroads. Do we move to Mimir? Do we try to figure out Cortex and stay with it? Was cloud an option? Or perhaps another vendor? Were they even an option? And so we really were at a decision point. Enter the DACI. So the DACI is something we use at SailPoint. It's not a new concept, but it's a decision-making framework that SailPoint engineering uses to make large, complex decisions involving multiple stakeholders. So just going over the framework real quick, the driver, the D is for driver, they're really pushing the DACI forward. You really don't want it to stagnate. You want that driver filling it out, corralling stakeholders, setting up meetings, really driving to the due date. The approver, obviously, making the decision. Ideally, you want one approver. You can have a group approving it, but you really want that single person making the decision. And they're the ones to listen to the pros and cons of everybody, and they make that final decision. And once that decision has been made, it's very important you may disagree, but everybody commits to that decision. Contributors, they could be subject matter experts. They help the driver with information that they may have. It could be another engineering team that's saying, hey, don't forget about me. Don't forget about my use case. I want to have my say in there as well. And then the informed teams that may be affected by the decision. We want to be very transparent with everybody so that there are no surprises. So what does it look like? It could be a Confluence doc or a Google doc, whatever you use in your office. And let's see, so it's pretty much, all the personas are listed up here with a due date, very important, and what happened. Pretty much all the information that they need to know about. List out all the options, the pros and cons. Just a central place to everyone can contribute and see what's going on. Another great thing about the DACI is that posterity. New people join SailPoint all the time. And when they join, maybe they have a question of why are we using such software, or why was a certain decision made? We can always point them to the DACI and say, look, this is the decision we made at the time with the information we had, and this is why we're using what we're using, and it's extremely helpful in that case. Another important thing is to not stay stagnated in that decision. There could be several reasons why it makes sense to open up a new DACI. Vendor stops innovating, or they're not listening to your feedback. Maybe there's a new player in the market. Costs have changed. Don't just think that decision is what you have to stick with. Stay opening up new DACIs. So back to our Cortex DACI, what were we looking at? What were our prerequisites? Cost. It's obvious. Costs have been important in the past, will always be important in the future. Capabilities. What did Mimir offer? What did cloud had to offer us? Was there another vendor that had some features that nobody else had? Support. Very important to us. We've always had great support from Grafana, even while we're on open source. Maintenance. This was a big one. Was Mimir easier to maintain than Cortex? or something like cloud, where there really wasn't much maintenance, was very important. And then a customer reference. Once it got down to the final two, we wanted to hear from a customer. What did they have to say about their experience? So where did we end up? Grafana Cloud, obviously. Cost. On all these things, they really hit cost. It was actually cheaper to run in Grafana Cloud than we could do in open source. We weren't expecting that. Capabilities, cardinality management dashboards, adaptive metrics, and a lot of performance gains were huge for us. I'll get to that in a moment here. Support. When we were in open source, we met with Grafana all the time, and they were just passionate. They really wanted us to be successful, and I look fondly at those moments where it was just open source and it was just, it was good times. And I thank Grafana for all the support. Maintenance, there was very little to no maintenance. We let Grafana handle all that complexity that we were handling. We could spend that time on higher priority initiatives. And we did speak with a customer, and they gave a rave review. So this was our Cortex architecture. It's actually the reference architecture, but we ran it pretty much exactly like you see. And it's a little complex. So that was before going to cloud. And now it's a much simpler architecture. Again, it is a reference architecture from Grafana, but again, throw a couple more exporters in there, and that's pretty much how we run it internally. We let Grafana handle all that complexity in the cloud. So that brings us to our next challenge. Now that we're in cloud, can we now leverage the tools that Grafana Cloud offers to reduce the cardinality and the metrics? And the answer is absolutely we could. The built-in, out-of-the-box cardinality management dashboards, we were able to take those and work with our engineering teams on reducing their cardinality, pinpoint where they could reduce, and they helped us a lot. Adaptive metrics, I'm not going to lie, is really the star of the show. Being able to drop metrics that aren't being used by anybody, and we're paying only for the metrics we value, allowed us to drop from 75 million active series to 50 million active series, a 33% reduction. We were early adopters, and we actually have a success story with Grafana and a blog post. If you want to check that out, it goes into much more detail about how it all came about. And that was last year. Last year was a 33% reduction. We continue to run adaptive metrics, and today we're down 50%. It's amazing. It is truly amazing. So what did we learn through all that process? SaaS can be more cost efficient than open source. This totally went against everything we had assumed before. We could spend more time on higher priority initiatives. The project where we were able to work with engineering on the cardinality, that wouldn't have happened if we were just maintaining our infrastructure constantly. It was projects like that where we could stop cardinality at the source instead of dealing with the outcomes. And finally, we could reduce metrics while we continue to grow. We're still signing up new customers, we're still writing new features, new microservices, we're still opening up new regions. All that growth is still happening, but at the same time, we're reducing our metric count, which it blows my mind how it happens. So what's next? We've been busy since then. We've run a ton of DACIs. Now that in Grafana Cloud, we have access to all these tools, so we're checking them all out. One interesting to note on here is K6. K6 was a completely different team from ours. That was the performance engineering team. They ran a DACI, and they came to the conclusion that K6 was the best tool that they evaluated. And that came in handy when we ran our Grafana Synthetics DACI, because it worked so well together. Our use case was really relatively simple. There was some low traffic in some areas that wouldn't trigger alarms, we have low-quality SLOs. So we just needed some synthetic traffic keeping those alarms up. That's our base case right now. We know it works really well with K6, and we are going to do a lot more advanced testing in the weeks and months to come. Grafana Search, this is a DACI that's actually in progress right now, where we're taking a look at it. We've met with Manoj. We do have some internal tooling monitoring our services internally, but there's much to be desired. It can be improved a lot, and when we saw Search come out last year, it was very intriguing, and so we're kicking the tires on that. Last thing for me, I want to invite, I take it you all like conferences, and so I want to invite everybody to our conference, which is next month, Navigate, in Orlando. We'll be releasing our latest and greatest stuff. We'll have hands-on workshops as well, and you'll get to network with identity experts. But that's my time. If you have any questions, I'll be around. But thank you very much for your time.